That's my coffee done.
I made a big pot of coffee and it just went into like one giant mug. Like that's been like drank most of it.
I've been buzzing off my tits on caffeine. I've been making a cafetiera coffee for myself like every day.
See, I drink like 3 or 4 coffees at least, and I usually have a can of Monster. Like, I'm still addicted to energy drinks, so I'm just a caffeine monster, like a literal caffeine monster.
I've just got an image of your face on a tin of Monster.
The thing is, I don't know how much it does for me anymore. Like, just
You
gets
probably
me to
built up an aversion, to be fair.
normal level.
I mean, one of my lasting memories of you, certainly when we lived in Aberdeen, was that wherever I was meeting you, I'd always see you coming from whatever direction you were coming in with smoking a fag. You normally had headphones on, and you were normally drinking a can of Monster or a can of Red Bull.
I always felt like I needed it before I went anywhere to like give me some kind of personality because I always felt like really tired a lot of the time. So I was just like, fuck, I need something to give me a boost before I go into this
But I,
social situation.
but I suppose, without being funny, man, I suppose there was good reason for that because you're you've got an underactive thyroid, haven't you?
Which yeah, which may have had something to do with it, or I don't know, just poor living possibly. I don't know.
The diagnosis: poor living.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. They tried and failed. They tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Scratchcast, the alternative pop culture podcast, the only podcast fully endorsed by Bernie Sanders mittens. Bit of topical joke there. I'm Sneds, and as always, I'm joined by the impeccably sculpted Mr. Grant Patterson.
Hello.
And we're just two Scottish laddies who love to talk about music. We're both in our 30s now, so laddies is probably pushing it a bit, to be fair, but we'll go with that. How you been getting on since the last podcast?
I've been good, man. Yeah.
You've ditched the tash.
I've ditched the tash, well and truly ditched the tash. I kind of played with the idea of maybe growing a beard, um, but although we're only in our 30s, my grey stubble's coming in thick and fast. So I felt as if I was to grow a beard, I'd run the risk of kind of looking a bit like Santa. So I decided to give that a pass.
I was wondering if maybe the tash was like starting to control your mind, like that episode of The Simpsons where Homer gets a hair transplant and it's like Snake's hair, and he starts murdering, committing crimes, and he's like, "It wasn't me, it was the hair."
I do remember that episode actually. It's pretty good.
I think it's a Treehouse. Must be a Treehouse of Horror episode.
Yeah, aye, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. We should probably wish everyone a happy new year. Seeing as the first podcast of 2021, but I don't know. Like with all the kind of stuff that's going on, it's probably not the happiest of New Year's with like coronavirus and then Brexit. So it's yeah, we'll see how 2021 pans out, I suppose, won't we?
It's early days.
It's early days, and there's already some good music going about. So let's just get into it then. So on our singles swap this month, we're discussing singles from American schizophrenic electronic duos 303 and 100 gecs, and Cleveland, Ohio's indie rockers Cloud Nothings. In Submission Corner, we discuss releases from acoustic punk Joe Billy III and Genoese post-rock trio Icatan. But that's not all. We're also reviewing Brocken Spectre by London's indie acoustic duo Radiant Heart, Fuck Art from Hamilton, Ontario's The Dirty Nil, Bob's son from Kenosha, Wisconsin's R.A.P Ferreira, and Jazz Welfare from podcast favourites Viagra Boys. So we just go straight into the single swap then.
Yeah, man. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, as Ned's quite rightly said, he gave me 303 and 100 gecs new song, Lonely Machines, which was released on the 13th of November last year. This was released on Photo Finish Records. It's approximately 2 minutes and 28 seconds long, so just under 2.5 minutes long. It's a collaboration between two musical artists, 303, whom, according to their Wikipedia page, are an American electronic music duo from Boulder, Colorado, which consists of Sean Foreman and Nathaniel Moat. They are probably best known for their hit single Don't Trust Me from their sophomore album, Want, which was released back in 2008. Don't Trust Me seems to be this kind of tongue-in-cheek number. Lyrics include a bit where they sing, tell your boyfriend if he has beef that I'm a vegetarian, I ain't fucking scared of him. And then the chorus kicks in with don't trust a hoe, never trust a hoe, which is quite interesting because there was a bit of a similar lyric in the song that we're about to review. But anyway, the band have also previously worked with the likes of Katy Perry on their songs Starstruck and Keisha. And I think it's their faces that feature on the song's artwork, albeit with some sort of negative photo filter added, and both of the band's names seemingly kind of tattooed onto their foreheads. And according to an article that I read, this is the first piece of music that they've made since 2016. 100 gecs, typically stylized all in lowercase, are another American music duo which consists of Dylan Brady and Laura Les. They released their first studio album back in 2019 and also released a companion or remix album entitled 100 gecs and The Tree of Clues back in 2020 also. As for the song itself, it kind of opens with this kind of Super Mario-esque chiptune 8-bit sound, which acts as a bit of a kind of rhythmic tool for the first part of the song. The song's vocals kick in around the kind of 10-second mark or so, and I think it's probably one of the singers from 303 that provide the vocals in this instance. He starts by singing, you're looking cute with that gap in your teeth, the jean jacket with the T underneath. And then there's that lyrics that I talked about earlier on, tell your boyfriend if he still has beef, that over time it's going to give him heart disease. The song then kind of ramps up a notch before going into the song's chorus, where we're treated to more layers and texture. There's this really kind of fat, bassy electronic sound that runs throughout it. That's quite enjoyable, and the odd kind of spike of kind of Thurman-esque digital flourishes, which I quite enjoyed. We're then introduced to who I'm assuming is probably 100 gecs with some glitchy digitalized vocals, which I think could potentially be quite divisive. I wasn't too sure what to make of it at first, but admittedly, it did kind of grow on me over time. The song then kind of bursts back into the chorus again. The song changes again around the kind of 4-minute, 44-second mark, where the musical instrumentation arrangement gets kind of stripped back a bit, and we hear the odd kind of whisper and then some echoey audio of screamed female vocals, which are quite hard to decipher. But the song ends on a high with some really lush, upbeat electronic drums and a really kind of groovy head-banging riff. And this type of thing isn't typically my wheelhouse, but yeah, it's all right. It was okay. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think all right is probably the way to describe it, because I think when I first heard this, I got quite into it just because of like I really like that opening. Like it's got like the sort of video game sounds, but it's like staticky electronic, but it's really bouncy. And then that like you're looking cute with that gap in your teeth bit. That's really catchy. Like it's really, I mean it is really poppy, but it's just a really cool, catchy intro. And then beyond that, it kind of becomes a fairly generic like auto-tune pop chorus kind of thing.
Yeah, aye.
It's not hugely memorable. It's got a pretty decent beat to it, and I think it would probably do pretty well on the radio. But it's that kind of generic sort of modern boy band almost. Like if you listen to bands like You Me at Six, or even what like Fall Out Boy have become in more recent years, they've all got that sort of sound, that sort of sound. But I mean, it's not terrible. It is catchy and it's pretty enjoyable. I think the more interesting parts for me are the bits that I think are down to 100 gecs, which are the more sort of glitchy parts, and I quite like that vocal modulation. Like you say, I think it is divisive, and I think 100 gecs in general are pretty divisive, but it's that kind of weird, those weird vocal modulations and weird sort of distortions and glitches. I think I quite like it because it reminds me of like Alice Glass and Crystal Castles,
Yeah.
which that's a sort of band and artist that I got heavily into, quite a few years ago. But I think I mean, 303 have been out. They've been about since like the mid 2000s, and 100 gecs are quite a bit younger by about a decade. So I think it's quite shrewd from 303 for collaborating with an artist like that, a sort of more current and more exciting artist, I suppose. I think from their standpoint, it's quite shrewd, and it makes for a pretty decent song. So yeah, I think this is quite good. It's not going to blow anyone's minds, but I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about because it's quite outside the realms of the stuff we generally talk about. I mean, you talked about 303, their song "Don't Trust Me" earlier, and
Yeah.
that there's parts of that remind me of The Lonely Island. I don't know if it's like deliberately. I mean, I suppose it has to be. It's not. It can't be particularly serious because one of the parts in it is "Shush girl, shut your lips, do the Helen Keller and talk with your hips," and it's like straight out of something like The Lonely Island would do. It's like, um, and that's just the bit that I just find it absolutely hilarious. But I didn't think the song was that great, but there was just bits like that in it, and made it kind of jump out a bit to me.
If you watch the music video, I think they're definitely taking the piss.
Yeah,
Um, I can't remember all that much in the music video, but I did watch it. But I think in the first part, they're kind of just jumping about wearing like sparkly pants or something like that.
so like a Lonely Island.
Exactly like a Lonely Island video, yeah. So I
But
don't think they take themselves too seriously.
no, I mean it reminded me a bit of like I've said here, like electronic pop punk. It's like the sort of worst of like Good Charlotte, but with some bloops and bleeps on it. Like
Yeah, okay.
that's kind of what it reminded me of. Not that I'm dissing Good Charlotte. I like the odd track of theirs, but and I mean 100 gecs similarly. I listened to their most popular song Money Machine on Spotify, and there's a lot of people talk about how this like quite an exciting band, like doing all these weird things, but that song to me just sounds like somebody took like a Justin Bieber or a Post Malone song and then just whacked loads of distortion and electronics all over it. It didn't really sound
New.
that new. It
Right,
just,
okay.
I mean, it did sound new, but it sounded like something old with a lick of paint kind of thing. I don't
Aye.
know if I'm describing that well, but I think yeah. So I don't know if I'm that enthused by either of these bands separately, but I did quite like this. But to be fair, I only listened to like one track from each of them, so it's not really giving them a shot, to be honest. Um, did you rate this?
I did rate it. I gave it a 6.
Yeah, I've given it a 6 as well.
Kind of a bit of a middle of the road mark, but yeah, it's all right. It is all right.
Yeah, it's weird because when I first heard it, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is really good," and I was really into it. And then the more I heard it, the more I was like, "Actually, I think it tricked me like a little bit." Like, but yeah, I think 6 out of 10, it's fine. Worth a listen, for sure. Some people might really vibe with it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that was actually remember the name of the song and the artist this time. It was Lonely Machines by 303 featuring 100 gecs.
You're looking cute with that gap in your teeth. So say cheese. Take a picture for me.
I open my phone and you're in my DMs. Why do you think that it's cute to make me creepy?
She's just the right type of twisted and sweet. So fuck it up.
So the other one was that's the one that you gave me was The Spirit Of by Cloud Nothings, which was released on the 17th of November last year on Car Park Records.
Mm-hmm.
So this song is taken from their 9th studio album, The Shadow I Remember, which is due to be released on the 26th of February this year.
Mm-hmm.
The Cloud Nothings are a sort of an American indie rock band from Cleveland, Ohio. And whilst I've heard of them in passing, they're not a band I've had the pleasure of listening to previously. So I don't know all that much about them. But I mean, they've obviously been around for quite a while. They're on to their 9th album at this point. So upon pushing play on The Spirit Of, I was immediately hit by sort of scrappy lo-fi lead guitar lines, which sounds like something straight out of kind of late noughties, early 2010s, like the sort of thing you might hear on the In-Betweeners soundtrack, like that sort of scrappy guitar. It's quite a cool driving guitar line, simple rumbling bass, and a sort of satisfying cymbal drum beat. There's some really great like shimmering cymbals and drum rattles throughout the verse and in the chorus, and there's this like cool demented piano chord just before it goes back into the verse after the short chorus. It's like just these sort of like stabbing piano keys, which I really enjoyed. I'm not a huge fan of the sort of indie slacker vocals throughout the verses. They don't, I don't know, they just don't like draw me in that much. Although they, after a few listens, they did grow on me. But yeah, the first time I heard it, it was I sort of cringed, but I did get used to them. So roughly the minute and a half mark, the vocals sort of crack a bit, and then the intensity of the drums ramps up through this fuzzy, layered instrumental section with keys and guitars, and then the vocals come back kind of a bit more shouted, and it ends on this really like cacophonous climax with all these jabbing guitars and shuddering drums. And so overall, I quite like it. For some reason, I've written here every time I listen to it, it leads on to like the next song, like was the previous single. The way that when Spotify releases a new single and there's been one before, they're like in a little mini playlist.
Yeah.
So it always goes on to this next song, Am I Something, which just to me opens like a punk version of the Spider-Man theme tune.
Right, okay.
I just wrote that down because it was like, oh yeah. The song itself's okay, but The Spirit Of is pretty good. It's pretty laid back and inoffensive most of the time. The vocals take a bit of getting used to. And I really like that build towards the end as well.
Yeah, as you said earlier on, it kind of reminded you of the type of thing that you'd maybe hear in the In-Betweeners soundtrack, something that you might have heard from the kind of like late 90s, noughties, and that's the exact reason why I like it so much. It felt familiar, and I couldn't help but kind of listen to it and kind of get this kind of sense of kind of nostalgia. For me, it was kind of reminiscent of the bands like the Vines, particularly like the lead singer's vocals.
Yeah, I never thought of that, but now that you mention it.
Yeah, and I would completely agree. I kind of loved how the kind of vocals kind of ramped up in intensity over the course of the song, and that kind of outro where his vocals become more strained and screamy. And I think there maybe is a back and forth between maybe the lead singer. I'm not 100% sure. It might just be the lead singer. I don't know, but I've got a feeling it's the lead singer and maybe another member of the band, where they sing this bit. It's like "To Your Love." Is it "To Your Love, to the Spirit of"? And I quite enjoyed that back and forth.
Yeah, that's quite a good bit. Yeah.
And as you said, the kind of song ends with this kind of crashing cacophony of cymbal splashes and frenzied kind of guitar jabs and sounds. Yeah, I enjoyed it, man. And like I said, it just felt familiar. It felt like the type of thing that I used to listen to when I was younger. So that's kind of part of the reason why I chose it.
Yeah, like I said, I really like that guitar right at the start, and like that piano bit, like that just comes back in just before the verse comes back in. The end's really good as well. Um,
What's
I've got
the rate it?
I've given it a 7.
Yeah, that's what it's a 7 or an 8 is what I gave it.
Yeah, I think it might grow on me a bit, but it just didn't grab me as much as I would have liked. Like for the whole song, it kind of there were bits that I really liked and other bits that were just kind of weren't as interesting. But yeah, a 7 out of 10, I think.
Cool.
What have you got me? What have you got for
You have a choice, Snids.
for the next one?
You have a choice.
Okay.
Choose a hand.
Oh,
Left or right? I don't know if you can see my hands. I'm assuming you can see my hands.
I can see. Go for the left. So you're right.
So my right, okay, this one,
Yeah.
right. So it's KNEECAP and DYRT. I've spoken to you about them before, I think.
Have you? Kneecap.
Yes.
Kneecap X Dirt.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with DYRT, but we've spoken about KNEECAP in the past. And the song is called MAM, spelled M-A-M. So it was released on the 1st of December, towards the end of last year. It's approximately 4 minutes and 7 seconds long, so just over 4 minutes long. KNEECAP are a hip hop trio from Belfast, Ireland. They mostly sing Irish, but there's also times where they sing a bit of English. And they've been on the go since about 2017, where they released their first single, C.E.A.R.T.A, which is Irish for rights, as in human rights, and released their first album, 3KAG, in 2018. So I was first turned on to them by our mutual mate Boff, and started listening to their single HOOD, which is fucking epic. I'd recommend you checking that out. And then went on to listen to Gail Gigolo's Get the Brits Out and a few tracks from their album. They're well worth checking out. Obviously, I don't speak Irish, so I don't have a clue what they're singing about. I think a lot of their songs are quite satirical in nature. You know what I mean? They're not afraid of kind of poking fun at themselves. But they kind of deal with more serious themes as well. Certainly, this song is dedicated to their mothers, and I think they spent a long time perfecting it. And unfortunately, one of the singer's mums died before she could hear it. She lost her life to suicide. So it kind of makes it ever more poignant, to be honest. It's a really interesting listen. I think you'll enjoy it.
Cool. Like now you've mentioned that they're like an Irish hip hop band. I do remember. I think there were like 3 songs. When I listened to them when you told me about them, there was like 3 songs. They're all pretty good. Hood might have been one of them. I don't remember, but yeah, cool. It should be interesting. I Yeah, so I've got for you the most mysterious song on the internet, which
Is that what it's called?
is called the most mysterious song on the internet because
Right.
the name and the artist are unknown. So I'm cheating a little bit here because this is by no means a recent single, but it seemed to be fairly topical. I watched a sort of YouTube video recently. There's this guy that I subscribe to. He's called Wang, WHANG exclamation mark, and he does this series. He's quite good. It's called Tales from the Internet, and he finds like weird stuff on the internet and then explains like the whole story. And one of these things was, or still is, because they still don't know who the artist is or what the name of the song is, and it's just called the most mysterious song on the internet, and it's a sort of 80s post-punk song. So
So it's from the
you'll
80s
find
then.
it. It's from the 80s, but for some reason, um, in like modern times, people are desperately trying to find out like who recorded it. I think they kind of think it's a sort of German band, but so find it on YouTube. The whole song's there. But I think there's rumors of they think it could be a certain band, but nobody actually knows for sure. So I just thought it'd be quite interesting to talk about.
Cool.
Um, so okay, so that was Kneecap X Dirt, Mom, and the most mysterious song on the internet. Right, let's go on to submission corner then. So this time round, we've got releases from acoustic punk Joe Billy III and Genoese post rock trio Ikitan. Will we just start with Joe Billy then?
Aye, do you want me to introduce it or?
If you want to, yeah, go for it.
Aye, so as Ned said there, so it's Joe Billy the Third, and the song is "I'm the Motherfucking Spider-Man." So this was released on the 11th of December, so just towards the end of last year. It's approximately 2 minutes and 52 seconds long, so just under 3 minutes. Joe Billy describes himself on his Bandcamp page as an introspective acoustic punk who's based out of Clifton, New Jersey, who's just trying to bring people together one song at a time. According to his Facebook page, he's primarily a drummer. However, over the years of playing with various different bands, he would always try and start wee side projects with intention of becoming the lead singer or the lead act, as it were, in a punk band, with punk being his main or most passionate musical outlet. However, unfortunately, for one reason or another, this never really transpired, and so he decided to make a go of it himself. He learned how to play guitar and write his own songs, and since then he has created 3 albums, the first being Censor This, which was released in 2016, and his most recent being Don't Mind Me, which was released just a little over 2 years ago, back in 2018. And again, like from his Facebook page, I noticed that he's recently provided vocals on an album entitled Andy B and the World, which I think might be worth checking out. So it's a collaboration. It's a ska punk folk album featuring something like 170 odd artists from all over the world, including, as I said, the man himself, Joe Billy, members of Real Big Fish, Zebrahead, Hasty Dixie, and loads more. It's available online as either a vinyl or digital download, with all proceeds going to Centrepoint charity, which is a homeless charity, and Music for All. I'm pretty sure that's been released. So yeah, I think we should try and get our hands on that and have a listen.
Yeah,
Both
sounds good.
both being fans of Real Big Fish and Hasty Dixie.
And Zebrahead, of
I
course.
don't really know that much Zebrahead,
I
man.
think I know like one song. I can't even remember what it's called. But,
I can remember that. I can remember that. So yeah, I remember. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Alex was quite into Zebrahead back in the day. But anyways, so as for I'm the Motherfucking Spider-Man, it's cracking. It's really good. I mean, he openly admits it's a comedy song. It's not to be taken seriously, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. With lyrics like, But hey, turn that frown upside down because my ass is looking so tight. The chorus, I'm the motherfucking Spider-Man, jizzing webs from my hand. And epic last verse. The goblin in green can get down on his knees while Electrode can choke on my chode. Rhino can take his horn and ram it up Vulture's cloaca, which you don't hear very often in songs. Scorpion, I'll take you. Venom's just a poser, and so is Shocker. Doc Ock can suck my dick, and you know Deadpool can suck it too. It features an acoustic guitar, lead electric guitar, and drums. It's a pretty straightforward number, but there's a definite kind of late 90s, early 90s kind of punk rock, pop rock vibe to it. And for my money, it could quite easily pass as a Real Big Fish song, to be honest. Or even an early Green Day kind of Trey Cool number. The likes of, Dominated Love Slave, stuff that Green Day used to do when they didn't take themselves too seriously. Kind of more so than kind of Tenacious D, in my opinion. It could just be an accent thing. It might just be where he's from. But yeah, it's certainly really infectious, and you can't help but dance along to it. Something I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I think I think this is really good as well. I mean, I think comedy or like parody songs is quite a difficult tightrope to walk. It can go either way really, and I think you're right. It's not so much Tenacious D. I don't know if that's just because Jack Black's vocals are so over the top most of the time because of his sort of metal influences, but this, yeah, I think this differs from Joe Billy's other stuff in that it's more of like a full band experience. But it does have those kind of muted acoustic guitar chords at the start. But then once it kicks in with the rest of the guitars and the drums, it never really lets up. It's pretty much a banger about being Spider-Man. And that chorus that you were talking about, where he's just like, "I'm the motherfucking Spider-Man. I shoot webs from my hand. Fight crime in spandex tonight. Whoa, ho, ho, ho!" It's just brilliant. I've been singing that all the time, and it's dumb, but it's really fun. And yeah, there's not tons of variation when you listen to it first, but there's actually lots of little cool flourishes, like different drumming styles and little acoustic licks and electric guitar. It's just a really fun song. So yeah, I think it's funny though because I had figured that a parody song, a sort of comedy song about Spider-Man, would appeal to our mutual friend, the Spider himself, Mr. James Murray. But I recommend this to him today, and he's like, "Well, I listened to a minute of it and didn't really enjoy it." It's just like, what? I figured this would be right up his street, but so I don't know what his problem is, but I think this is really good.
Maybe he felt as if Joe Billy was encroaching on his turf.
On his
That's
territory,
what
yeah,
it was.
quite possibly, quite possibly. Yeah. There's only room for one motherfucking Spider-Man.
I think there can only be one motherfucking Spider-Man in Keith.
Definitely. So, what have you given this? I've given it an 8.
Well, I've said an 8 or 9, but I mean, possibly even a 10. I mean, like it's
For what it is.
for what it is. Yeah, you know what I mean? It does exactly what it says on the tin. You know what I mean? It's a perfect comedy song.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't know anything about Spider-Man, which, I mean, is a pretty rare thing these days, I would say. He's so kind of entrenched in pop culture. But if you don't know or care about Spider-Man at all,
Yep.
then you probably be like, what's the point in this? But I'm not even a big Spider-Man fan, really. I just think it's a good song with some funny lyrics.
Yeah, I mean, me neither. Like, I'm not a fan of the Marvel universe at all. You know what I mean? There's 101 different things I'd rather watch, but I can still appreciate this.
Totally. Did you mention? I don't know if you mentioned he's working on a new album. I don't know when that's coming out, but
I didn't see that, man. I didn't see
I
that.
think he's the on his website. There's like a press section, and there's like an can't remember who interviewed him, but I think he said in there that he's working on a new album which is more full band stuff. So I don't think it's necessarily comedy or parody stuff, but a more kind of full band sound. So that'd be. I mean, if it's just like straight up kind of punk rock or um, that kind of stuff, then it should be pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah, man.
All right, so that was I'm the Motherfucking Spider-Man by Joe Billy or Joe Billy the Third. I think for if you're going to be like a comedy artist, if that was going to be his thing, I think Joe Billy the Third sounds more prestigious and more kind of. If you're saying right, I'm a comedian, being Joe Billy the Third would be funnier.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it probably is funnier.
But that's a little bit of an aside.
Cause my ass is looking so tight. Yeah, I got problems with folks who just want me to die. Green get down his knees while they're choking, choking my shoulder, and rocket take his horn and rip it up. I'm the little Spider-Man, sweat from my hands. Rock around the Spanish tonight.
Okay, so the other one we have is
Iketan.
Iketan, in all caps. So they have released a single track EP, which lasts 20 minutes and 20 seconds, and it's called 2020. It was also released in 2020, so it's quite clever, I suppose. So Iketan are they describe themselves as a heavy post rock trio rather than just a post rock trio, and they are from Genoa in Italy. And I suppose it's something that's relatively common in post rock, is this is entirely instrumental, and it feels quite like a sort of extended jam session, which I think when you read some of the stuff the band have said, that's sort of the vibe that they're going for. So it's it's 20 minutes. It's 20 minutes long, and as you'd imagine, over 20 minutes, there's a ton of variety. It's a single track, but there are probably points where you could almost split it into tracks. There's like it opens with this sort of oscillating keyboard sound before like reverberating, crooning, almost battling electric guitars come in, and there's a nice kind of trundling bass line behind those dueling guitars. At the sort of 2 minute mark, there's this big distorted riff comes in, just adding a nice touch of like hard rock and metal into the sort of more traditional kind of rock guitar, which I suppose is where they get the heavy side to this post rock description. At times, there's a sort of shimmery shoegaze sound to the guitars, which sounds really great alongside the sort of thump of the drums and the rumble of the bass and the crunch of those chunky riffs. There's some great sections where the band just sort of noodle away with their guitars. Some really sort of awesome guitar hero moments. And like I said, throughout those 20 minutes, there are certain points where they take a sort of stylistic change or a change of pace. So it makes for a really interesting listen.
I agree with you there, man. As you said, obviously it's a kind of mammoth 20 minutes and 20 seconds long, so you think it would probably be a pretty hard listen. Especially as you said, it's a purely instrumental piece. There's absolutely no vocals on it whatsoever. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think there's enough kind of tonal, tempo, and stylistic changes throughout the course of the song to keep you engaged.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you quite rightly said, there's elements where it does feel a wee bit shoegazy. There's a bit of kind of prog rock in there, thrash metal. I've also said that there's a bit of a kind of psychedelic kind of feel to it as well at times. Um, elements of kind of classic rock in there as well. My favourite bit in particular is kind of from the kind of 14-minute mark onward. I really enjoyed the kind of repetition of this kind of guitar riff that they use in that particular section, that really kind of punchy bass line. But the bass is on point throughout the course of the song, as are the guitars. I mean, the whole thing is excellently polished and produced. It's a really impressive piece of work. Um, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what the guys come out with next.
That bit you mentioned around the 14-minute mark reminds me quite a bit of Alice in Chains. The bass reminds me in particular of Man in the Box. And like that really drilling guitar riff is definitely one of the coolest parts of the song. Like you said, there's classic rock. I mean, sort of 8.5 minute mark, there's something that could be straight out of a Black Sabbath song.
Yeah.
Then that's where it sort of then goes on to this more sort of cosmic psych rock sound. So there's definitely loads of variety, and like you said, I think it changes regularly enough to keep you engaged, and you don't sort of get bored with it. As soon as like a bit might be ready to overstay its welcome, they move on to something else. So yeah, really interesting. And if you're a fan of guitar music and like rock and metal in particular, then this should be right up your street, really.
Yeah, I think there'll be plenty for you to sink your teeth into.
Definitely. And I mean, a 20-minute long track can be a bit daunting, but it's something you can just throw on in the background and go about your business and then keep coming back to every now and again. It works perfectly for that. You can just go away about your business, and then you'll hear something else that draws you back in. So really cool. And like you say, be interesting to see what Icatan do next, whether they do, I mean, there's some sort of concept to this, with it being called 2020 and it being 20 minutes, 20 seconds long. I wondered if there would be something you could kind of listen to the themes and the tones of the music and be like, this is like 2020 playing out or something. But
yeah, I kind of expected that as well. I don't know. I did read, like, I don't know if there's something in this. Maybe they'll kind of develop on it in future. But the album's artwork was created by a guy called Luca Marcenaro, and it's a kind of angry figure, kind of bursting out of the earth, and smashing stones either on his head or above his head. I'm not quite sure. And it said Icatan is the god of the sound of stones. But I couldn't find anything about Icatan anywhere online, so I don't know if Icatan's like a figure from, I don't know, Italian mythology. I really don't know. Like, so I don't know this. I don't know the significance of that in relation. There might be no significance whatsoever, but as you said, with it being called 2020 and with it being 20 minutes and 20 seconds long, I did think there'd be some sort of theme there, and I'm sure there is. It's just I'm not intelligent enough to kind of pick up on that.
yeah, perhaps not. But yeah, as a just a sort of mixture of different styles of rock and metal, I thought this was really good. So I've given it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm 7 or 8 for me.
Cool. So we'll see what comes from Icatan. Maybe they'll bring out an album or something in the near future. So yeah, that was 2020 by Icatan.
Okay, we'll go on to the album reviews. We'll just do these in chronological order as we
Chronological
normally
order,
do.
yes, man. Do you want me to start with Radiant Heart, Brocken Spectre? Spectre?
If you learn how to say it properly, then yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll try. I think it's because it's called that Brocken Spectre. I find that's a bit of a stumbling block for me. Brocken Spectre. Brocken. Fuck.
Spectre.
Brocken Spectre. Yeah. Okay. So Radiant Heart with Brocken Spectre was released on the 1st of December 2020. It's 10 songs and approximately 38 minutes and 6 seconds long, so just under the kind of 40-minute mark. We previously reviewed the opening track from the album, All the World for Him, in the last episode of the podcast. And as we said previously, the album's title is not a typo and does in fact come from a form of naturally occurring phenomena whereby a person and or observer's shadow is cast upon the clouds opposite the sun's direction. The figure's head is typically surrounded by halo-like rings of coloured light, and there's a picture of what this might look like in the album's artwork as well. As we said previously, Radiant Heart are an indie folk duo consisting of Celia McDougall and Chris Moore. The first track on the album references an experience that the band members had whilst out swimming at a local quarry where they witnessed a young boy drowning. Chris Moore reportedly dived in to save him, and he very nearly drowned himself. And it was evidently a kind of fairly traumatizing experience for everybody involved. That number is quite a kind of wistful, melancholic acoustic track. As I said previously, it does kind of layer up with odd kind of tinkling piano and organ flourish. The artist's vocals are quite restrained, but nevertheless complement each other really well. And I think we both agreed that the track could potentially be quite divisive, in that you're either going to really like it, or potentially find it a bit too samey and lose interest. And admittedly, I thought that, like I think I said something along the lines of that if the whole album was to be like this, I'm not too sure if I would like it.
I said something similar. Yeah.
Yeah, but I must confess, I did actually really enjoy this album. I listened to it quite a lot. Really enjoyed kind of just having it on the background as I've kind of went about my business. And as we said before, of All World for Him, it's quite a relaxing experience. It's quite a relaxing listen. How did you find it, man?
I quite like this quite a lot, actually. I mean, like you were saying there, on the strength of All the World for Him and the kind of idea that maybe an album full of that kind of thing might become a bit of a slog. I've been pleasantly surprised, I think. I mean,
Me too.
there's actually when you listen for it, there's actually a lot of interesting stuff on here. Like, okay, there's a sort of they've got a certain vocal style, which is this kind of male and female vocal harmony, fairly restrained, and that's present on all the tracks. But there's little changes in note and timbre every now and again that just little subtleties, and it's the same in the instrumentation as well. Like just some subtlety to the pianos or the guitars, or a little change in the instruments. There's banjo in quite a few of the tracks, and overall it's just quite a soothing listen. Like especially, I mean, those vocals are very, very soothing. And I mean, the second song on the album, In the Dunes, is just a great example of that. Like the guitars are really gentle. There's the bass is sparse. The keyboard's quite whimsical, and there's, like I said, there's a bit of banjo in there towards the end, and that sort of gentle mix of the male and female vocals, it really blends well together, and it's not too dissimilar to Tongue, who we talked about on the last episode. That kind of vocal.
Yeah, I mean, we said that, when we reviewed the the first song, and I think I kind of likened them to the likes of the Moldy Peaches,
Yeah.
of Monsters and Men, but within the Dunes, I was reminded of Sufton Stevens.
Okay.
Um, in particular, I was kind of reminded of a track off his fifth studio album, Illinois, called John Wayne Gacy Jr., which is a song about the infamous American serial killer of the same name. Um, and not in terms of the kind of song's lyrical content or anything like that. It was more to do with Chris Moore's vocals. I just felt as if they were very similar to Sufton Stevens on this number, particularly during that kind of vocal refrain of "Oh my God." And there's a very similar bit in the Stevens song. So yeah, that was a standout track for me, and it's something that I really got into and really enjoyed. Another standout track for me is probably kind of track number 5, Museum, which is again, another kind of meandering, kind of melancholic number. Um, this sounds like a criticism. I don't mean it to be, but I've written here that there isn't necessarily anything new about this track, but it's still nevertheless a kind of really soothing, relaxing, easy listen rather. The vocal harmonies between the two singers are kind of beautifully tender and again complement each other really well. There's the inclusion of the banjo that you kind of mentioned earlier on, and the occasional kind of organ flourish in the song's musical arrangement, and yeah, it just kind of coalesces into something that's really, really nice to listen to.
Yeah, I I like Museum as well. There's that like that acoustic line that runs through it. I've described it as heartwarming.
Yeah, okay.
And the vocals kind of later mimic that melody. There's a bit of slide guitar in there, which didn't bother me. And and
I know how you feel about your slide guitar
it's,
snits.
I quite enjoyed it there. Quite enjoyed it. There's a bit of harmonica as well. And but the best part is where the melody, the vocal melody changes, and the line is, "I guess I just thought you should know," and it's just the way. I think it's like Celia's vocals come to the front a little bit more, and it's just that kind of slight change in the delivery. I found quite interesting. Um, and it's like that. They're peppered throughout the album that I like. I mean, um, Halo Glow, Chloe K,
Yes.
is one of the highlights for me. That it's sort of a chorus, I suppose, where it goes Chloe K with your hair all grown out. I couldn't quite figure out what the rest of the lyrics were, which I suppose is a bit of a downside to the softer delivery of the vocals. Sometimes is picking out some of the lyrics is difficult.
Yeah, I would say that would be one of my criticisms of the album overall. I found it really hard to decipher a lot of the vocals.
Which is annoying if you're trying to pick out like a bit that you really like and you can't figure out what it is. But it's not a huge criticism
No.
because I find that this when I listen to this, it kind of just washes over me, and I'm just it's just like I keep using the word soothing, but that seems to be the best way to describe it for me. You can just sit and put this on and let it kind of wash over you and enjoy it. But I do think that it's one of these albums that on each listen more things reveal themselves to you,
Yeah,
like
I agree.
like the little different like instruments and little flourishes and things you didn't quite notice before, which is a sign of a good album. When each time you listen to something, you find something new on it.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Because I mean that's how I've kind of consumed this album. I've just kind of had it on in the background whilst I've been going about my business. And as I said before, I did find it hard to kind of decipher some of the lyrics, and I have said that perhaps if there was maybe a bit more of a kind of bite in their delivery, then I would have maybe kind of acknowledged them a bit more and been able to kind of pick them out a bit better. But then it wouldn't be what it is. You know what I mean? It would change the feel and tone of the album. So yeah, I maybe just need to kind of sit with it a bit more. But it's a good album. I've described it as the perfect accompaniment to a slow, dreamy Sunday morning.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, man.
Just sit in a chair in the sun, your headphones on, just chill out to it. A cup of tea and some biscuits.
Aye, well, I would choose coffee, but aye, yeah.
Okay. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
But yeah, I think if you don't like indie acoustic music, then it's not going to change your mind. It just isn't. If you don't like this kind of thing, you're not. This isn't going to suddenly make you change your mind. But if you like soothing vocals and instrumentals and good musicianship or great musicianship, then give it a shot. Definitely. It's slow, it's gentle, it's plodding. There's no drums. I mean, we didn't even mention that. There are no drums on this album. I think there's the odd percussion here and there, but there are no drums, no traditional. There's nobody on a drum kit.
No.
So, which you don't even really notice. I mean, I suppose this is why I didn't mention it until now. You don't miss it.
Absolutely. What did you rate it?
I'm sitting on a 7, but I
Yeah.
think it's one of these ones that I don't know if I've listened to it enough times, and I think it will. I've said 7, pushing an 8. So I think the more I listen to it, the more I'll like it. To be honest.
Yeah, I've given it a 7. It's
Yeah.
a 7 for me. But I completely agree with what you're saying. Maybe if I was to kind of sit with it, as we said, maybe if I was to sit with it and spend a bit more time, it'll kind of grow on me, and I'll kind of grow to appreciate it a bit more.
Yeah, I think it probably rewards paying attention to it. If you pay attention to it, you'll get more out of it. It's not something upbeat pop music that you just put on to have a boogie to kind of thing.
No.
No, I really put on pop music and boogie to it.
When was the last time you boogied?
I don't know.
You'd have no bad words said about me.
Cool. So what we got next?
The Dirty Nil.
So yeah, we have Fuck Art by the Dirty Nil. So the Dirty Nil are a rock band from Hamilton, Ontario in Canada. Fuck Art is their third studio album to date, following 2016's Higher Power and 2018's Master Volume. It's 11 tracks and roughly 35 minutes long, and it was released on the 1st of January 2021 on Dine Alone Records. So the Dirty Nil, they're primarily a rock band, but they do mix elements of metal and thrash into their sound, which I think really makes them stand out. My
introduction to the band was on their sophomore album, Master Volume, which was one of my favorite albums of 2018, and it's almost all of the songs have just got brilliantly catchy choruses as you listen through it, and even that album displays a level of confidence and swagger that many bands just don't have. And the fact that they chose to end that album with a cover of Metallica's Hit the Lights, I think just further proves that point. Really good cover as well. So I've been looking forward to Fuck Art coming out, which is an amazing album title, by the way. I think it's a brilliant album title.
Did you read where it supposedly came from?
No, I did not.
So, according to an article that I read on spin.com by Brian Rowley, which was released the same day as the album itself, the band's lead singer Luke Bentham got the name for the album after attending painting lessons at his local community centre. Apparently, there was an older guy by the name of Mr. Gallagher who kept moaning about how his brushes didn't look right or they didn't look like brushes, and basically he couldn't paint. He was kind of struggling with whatever the kind of class tutor was asking him to do. And despite positive encouragement from the class tutor, an exasperated Mr. Gallagher threw down his tools and muttered "fuck art" under his breath. So yeah, apparently that's where the name for the album came from, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be like he like smashed his easel into pieces and like screamed "fuck art" at the top of his lungs.
Before storming out.
Yeah, that's quite a cool little story. Aye, so basically I was quite excited about "Fuck Art" coming out, and then the first single, "Done with Drugs," came out I think in June last year, and
17th of June.
yeah, so and it's just a proper banger. And it's got like this really catchy lead guitar line that opens the song up, and a really massive like sing along chorus. So like I was already quite excited for the album, and then that song dropped. I was like, this is going to be good. Have you had any previous experience with the Dirty Nil at all?
Not at all, man. So I really didn't know what to expect. So the album opens with this kind of punishing thrash metal guitar riff and drums on Doom Boy, which was released as one of the singles from the album, before the lyrics kick in about the kind of 14-second mark or thereabouts. And for me, it was quite an interesting juxtaposition because I'm hearing this kind of thrash metal guitar sound, and what I would probably describe as like a kind of pop punk vocals.
Yeah, just on that, this just popped into my head. It's if you think of Dinosaur Pile Up and
Yeah,
like thrash
yeah,
metal set, there's a bit of kind of that going on there.
yeah, you're absolutely right. Um, but yeah, I suppose that song in particular, Doom Boy, although it kind of opens with this kind of like harsh, kind of thrash metal sound, as I said, it's essentially it's a love song, isn't it? Really,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
like a punk
essentially a
rock
love
love
song.
song.
Yeah, kind of talks about holding hands with this person. I think it says something about kind of holding hands and listening to their favorite bands such as Slayer and Turnstile. And for me, it could have quite easily been like a Weezer song.
Yeah, there's that element to like, I suppose Weezer have got, they're known for their really catchy kind of vocal melodies and guitar leads and stuff. I see where you're coming from. But yeah, I mean, the album just opens up with like a series of really good rock songs, like Doom Boy. I mean, it's got that kind of thrash element, but like you say, it's a sort of it's kind of a punk rock love song, but with elements of thrash in it.
Mhm.
Blunt Force Concussion. Um, it's a bit more restrained, but it's got. I suppose the band have got this knack of just having really hooky, like vocal lines, and Blunt Force Concussion has just got this chorus that goes, "Give me one half dozen blunt force concussions, crack my head in two, Just don't put me through saying I love you. And me reading it out doesn't do it justice, but it's just brilliant. Like, so fun to sing along to. It's one of the sort of, I know we're not far into the year, but it's one of the things I've been singing the most this year so far. But it's also got this like really sort of Nirvana inspired riff in there as well. So those first two tracks are good. Then you've got Elvis 77, which has got all the kind of hallmarks of the Dirty Nil so far: catchy vocals, catchy guitar lines, quite crushing guitar riffs, and then they throw in this like desert island guitar lick out of nowhere that probably shouldn't work, but it does. And the kind of repeated line that closes out the song of "Why didn't you call your mama more?" is that's going to be like, you see this band live, that's going to be a huge like crowd participation moment.
Yeah.
Like, and then it's on to "Done with Drugs," which I've mentioned. It's just got like the core. Like, there's so many choruses on this that are just, they're all so catchy. It's hard to kind of play these songs off against each other. But the moment on "Done with Drugs" near the end, where we just start screaming, "I'm done with drugs," like it's so good. Like, it's just such a great moment. What's your general kind of impression of the album?
It took me a while to get into it. Found it enjoyable, but I think I'm enjoying it the more times I listen to it. To be honest, it's certainly grown on me. For me, Ride or Die is my favorite track on the album.
Yeah.
Oh, that was absolutely fantastic. Opens with this kind of Black Sabbath-esque guitar riff. And from what I've been reading, I think the band are massive fans of Black Sabbath in and of themselves. So it opens with that kind of riff before the lead singer's vocals kick in around the kind of 20-second mark. And for me, it felt as if it could have been like a Misfits song from either the Danzig or Graves era. I know that there's that's a big thing if you're a kind of a Misfits fan, but I really dug the bit about the kind of 4 minute mark where the band stops playing and the lead singer screams, "You born alone, you die alone, that's the truth." I mean, that felt as if it could have just jumped straight from a Misfits song. And even the song's outro, you get this kind of really kind of infectious group vocals and headbanging riff, and even the way they kind of finish off the song, that feels like something straight from a kind of classic rock song. But yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's loads of elements in there where, yeah, you find yourself kind of headbanging along. The vocals are really infectious. Choruses are great. Hang Your Moon was another good track for me. I've kind of described it as a fairly kind of straightforward rock number. However, there's an interesting bridge and it ends with kind of these kind of floaty, ethereal sounds. And as you said, there are quite a number of kind of stylistic changes throughout the course of the album, which kind of keeps you engaged. Yeah. I did enjoy it. But like I said, I think I'm going to get more out of it the more I listen to it.
Yeah, I think of the albums we're reviewing this time round, this is the one I've listened to the most. I think because it's really accessible.
Yeah.
You can just listen, you just put it on, listen to it all the way through, and it's just a really fun ride. It's really enjoyable from start to finish. And I could talk about every one of these songs and say how great they are. I mean, and there's nothing. There are no bad songs on this, and I think it's one of those albums where I'll have a different favorite song each time. Yeah, my favorite song on the album will change. I mean, the guitars. I mean, I talk a lot about the choruses and the vocals, but the guitars, like the guitar solos, like at the end of The Guy Who Stole My Bike, like there's a really long form guitar solo on that. And then at the end, on the closing song, One More in the Bill, there's like a virtuoso guitar solo as well. So it's like I feel like this is like they're proper like rock stars. Like they're they're all like really good musicians and they're really confident about what they're doing, and that comes across in the music.
What did you rate it?
I'm giving this a 10 out of 10, Grant. Like
Okay,
I can't fault it.
fair enough.
People say that there's no good rock music these days, and this album's like a big fuck you to people who say that. It's like you just have to look for it. Like
There's a hell of a lot of good music out there, man. Almost too much.
well, I think there is too much, which is because it's so difficult to keep track of everything. But
yeah, like I said, I can't fault this. So it has to be a 10 out of 10. I'm going to be listening to this a lot. And I mean, I really liked Master Volume, the previous album, and I think I already like this better. Like I think it's more consistent. Whilst I haven't seen them live in the flesh, I did see them. They did like a headline live stream, which I just caught out of sheer luck being on Facebook at like midnight on a Friday night, and I saw that they were posting this live stream, and they just played. They played for about an hour as part of this Hamilton music and arts festival that happens every year called Super Crawl. So they were on a proper headline stage, and they just played for a full hour, and they were just impeccable. Like they sound exactly as good as they do on the record, and they've got such a strong back catalogue of songs. And like I say, the confidence is palatable, I suppose. And the frontman's vocals are, I mean, I think the register of some of the his vocals are difficult to keep up with, but he doesn't even skip a beat or have any kind of trouble reproducing that live. So definitely a band that when live music does return, I'll be desperate to see. So yeah, great band.
Cool.
did you rate it?
I did rate it, man. I didn't rate it as highly. I gave it an 8.
Yeah, which is
Still a good rating.
which
Yeah.
is a really good rating, man. Really good rating. But yeah,
It's going in. It's going
I
into
feel
the
like I'm fanboying over this quite a bit, but I just think it's fucking brilliant. So yeah, that goes into the Hall of Fame, and yeah, so that was Fuck Art by the Dirty Nil.
Do you want me to go into this one?
R.A.P Ferreira?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, go for it.
So I wasn't 100% sure as to the full title of this album. I think it's R.A.P Ferreira, Bob's son, R.A.P Ferreira in the Garden Level Cafe of the Scallops Hotel.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I've just been calling it Bob's Son, but yeah, I did see that it had like an extended title.
I think it's listed on. I think it's listed on kind of Spotify and what have you as just Rap Ferreira Bob's son, and you'll
Okay.
find it doing that, or searching for it like that. But anyway, it was released on the 1st of January 2021 on Ruby
Yacht.
Yacht. Fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Yak. Um, Ruby Yacht, which is Ferrara's own record label, which is based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's typically stylized as RBYT. The record label is named after his granny and is completely self-owned and self-financed by Ferrara himself, and currently operates out of his record store, Soul Folk Records, in Bideford, Maine. The album has 12 songs on it and is approximately 35 minutes and 10 seconds long. Rap Ferrara's real name is Rory Allen Philip Ferrara, Ferrara, and he's went by several different monikers in the past, including Milo, which is typically stylized in all lowercase, and also Scallops Hotel. On his Bandcamp page, he has described himself variously as the Esoteric Electro, the Black Morpheus, High Yellow, the Sly Rebel, Brother of the Wind in the Wisdom Body, Lord Scipio, the Cosmo Dark, the Bear, aka Boogie Pops, is poet and con artist from nowhere. And I must say that just like the character Morpheus from Greek mythology, he has certainly cast a spell on me, and I've pretty much listened to this album non-stop for 2 days.
Really?
Yeah, and this, I didn't think this would be my cup of tea, to be honest, but I got really into it. Um, yeah, and I mean, I think.
Yeah, I really wasn't sure how you would respond to this at
I,
all.
I think out of all of these albums, I've probably listened to this one the most,
All right, okay.
um, which surprised me just as much as surprised you, man, to be honest. Because I think generally speaking, if you were to kind of read about him on, say, like his Wikipedia page or kind of other articles online, he's generally characterized as being either a kind of hip hop or rap artist.
Mhm.
Um, And with this being his kind of seventh studio album to date, and kind of not having listened to his other albums, I can't really comment on his earlier work, but I would certainly, I mean, this certainly doesn't feel typical of that genre, in my opinion. Certainly not the mainstream stuff that I've been subjected to over the years. It certainly feels more kind of innovative and experimental. And when I was doing a wee bit of research into the album, I kind of discovered that the album is, in fact, it's kind of somewhat of a concept album, and is a tribute to the late American beat poet and performance artist Bob Kaufman, full name Robert Garnell Kaufman, who is believed to be responsible for coining the term beatnik back in the day.
Mhm.
And he was kind of heavily involved in that kind of artistic and alternative lifestyle of the late 1950s and 60s in New York and San Francisco. Um, so with that in mind, I think there is quite a lot of kind of spoken word poetry and elements of kind of jazz thrown in there as well, which I really enjoyed and kind of, yeah, I really dug.
I mean, this is I'm not hugely familiar with Rap Ferreira either. I think I'd heard like maybe one or two tracks. I mean, he had an album out last year, and I heard the track Doldrums from that, which is similar to the sort of stuff on here. It's like a laid back sort of jam. But I'm kind of familiar with this sort of scene. It's someone that gets referred to as like art rap sometimes.
Art rap, okay.
Um, so it's like you say, it's not like traditional hip hop so much, or like the stuff you might hear on the radio, that kind of sort of thing.
No.
So there's a band that I'm heavily into called Arm and Hammer, and they do sort of weird, dark, difficult to listen to hip hop, I suppose. And there's also like the likes of Open Mike Eagle, and they sort of push the boundaries of what hip hop is, I suppose. Um, I mean, the instrumentation is sort of unusual. The timing can be almost completely offbeat. Like you said, the style of rapping is more like poetry or spoken word. And you mentioned what was his name?
Bob
Uh,
Kaufman.
Bob Kaufman, who's somebody I haven't heard of, but I didn't know that this was a concept album. Although reading it, I found that the final track is some of his work. Or at least I think the lyrics are. But it reminded me of Gil Scott Heron, who's similarly a sort of beat poet, and he's often cited as the sort of godfather of rap. So it's definitely, there's a lot more in common with sort of spoken word beat poetry than there maybe is than sort of traditional. Well, maybe not traditional, but more modern
Mainstream.
hip hop, mainstream hip. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I'm really surprised to. I honestly thought you might hate this.
No, I mean, it did kind of remind me of what was the name of that artist that we covered a few episodes back? Fantastic.
Negrito,
Yeah,
fantastic.
Fantastic Negrito. There were bits in it that kind of reminded me of that, but I would say I enjoyed this more than Fantastic Negrito's album. I had to kind of laugh because like the first time I listened to this album, I listened to my newly acquired Amazon Alexa. I've been dragged screaming and kicking into the 21st century. I got given that as part of my Christmas, and yeah, so I asked Alexa to play this song, and obviously the kind of first track on the song is him saying you're listening to Bob Sun now, play Bob Sun now, turn on Bob Sun, activate Bob Sun, do Bob Sun, and I had a pretty similar experience trying to get my Alexa to work.
I thought that first part was quite funny, but are you now saying play Bob's son in like an American accent, like play Bob's son, like he does
Retrieve
on that
Bob
first track,
Sun,
retrieve Bob's son.
do Bob Sun. My Alexa's going fucking mental just now.
And I thought that was like a weird improvisation, but it maybe just was them trying to like use the Alexa, or maybe that's the idea. Maybe they just knew that it would be difficult and thought um, it'd be funny. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's kind of like a known kind of joke
Yeah,
in reference to that. Um, but yeah, I think there's so much to say about this album. Like the second track, the Cough Bomber's Return. Like I tried desperately to find out what a cough bomber was, but I couldn't find out. I couldn't find anything about it online. But yeah, there was this kind of strange bridge at around the 1 minute 48 second mark, which for me kind of sounds as if it had came straight out of a kind of Frank Zappa album. It was this kind of weird kind of American show game shtick bit. It kind of doesn't really last very long, but it's a bit out there. And then I think after that he starts. What does he start singing? There's just this kind of vocal refrain of, is it Frankie Little Rappers Must Get? Oh, fuck, what is it? Oh, I can't remember. I
there's
can't
a
remember.
lot of weird like
There's
refrains
lots of
that
weird
happen on
bits.
this album, which I mean a lot of this album I do not understand. Like the
Hmm.
lyrics, I don't. I think it's quite philosophical, which is often quite difficult to understand anyway. But like you said on the Cough Bombers Return, I think these songs they change so much throughout.
Yeah.
Like you could almost split these songs into smaller songs. Like it's quite progressive in that
in that way. It's like a prog rap album, if that exists. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's like a stage musical bit, like looped harp music with a cool drum beat that almost sounds like it's changing tempo every few beats, and then this like weird stage musical bit, and then it goes towards the end. It goes back to like a more traditional like 90s jazz rap kind of sound, like something like Jurassic 5, um, something like that. But just all over this album, there's just weird left turns out of nowhere. Um, like it's just
Yeah, he kind of messes with the kind of time signatures quite a lot, and I suppose that's probably in keeping with that kind of jazz style, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
that kind of third track, Yam Ships and Flax Seeds, you kind of mentioned there that kind of dreamy harp sounds. So there's a bit of a return of that. There's an electronic drum beat, kind of floaty, ethereal soundscapes with um, Ferreira rapping over the top of it. However, again, as we said, kind of messes around with the kind of time signatures around the kind of 1 minute mark. It takes on more of this kind of jazz house cafe feel. We're kind of treated as like these kind of soft drum brushings, a tinkling kind of jazz piano arpeggios, and Ferreira's performance does feel as if it takes on more of a kind of beat spoken word poetry vibe, particularly that bit where he sings yes, pain comes in dreams. Ooh, 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 ooh. That for me, that reminded me of the likes of something Tom Waits might have done back in the day. So again, I suppose kind of keeping in with that idea of it kind of being a beat kind of poetry or performance art type of thing. And then it ends with this voice sample of someone saying, "My only defense against fate is color,"
yeah,
which I discovered is a quote from a guy by the name of Larry Poons. That's apparently his real name, who's an American abstract painter. And I don't know that much about the quote. I couldn't find the context in which he said it. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of themes at play here. You mentioned it being quite a kind of philosophical number. And I thought that audio clip was quite an interesting segue into the next song on the album, which is track 4, which is, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this properly, but Diogenes on the Auction Block, which opens with Ferreira rapping about stepping up to the auction block and declaring that if he was the type of slave you buy, sorry, he is the type of slave that you buy if you need a new master. I could wrap the blues backwards and around myself and tie it in the front like a karate belt. So I don't know. Larry Poons is a white guy, white American guy, but for me, it's for some reason I thought maybe that was a comment on ethnicity, and I just thought it was interesting that he then talks about being a slave in the next song, and that's why I said that I found it was quite an interesting segue between the two songs, or an interesting kind of bridge between the two songs
yeah. I think it definitely takes on a different meaning in that sort of
in that
context
context.
for sure.
Absolutely. Eh,
Um, sorry, I really like the line that you read out, which is I high kicked the moon out of its socket. Just think is really really cool.
yeah. Um, Again, I don't know if the two are connected, but I'd never heard of Diogenes, what that meant, what that was. So I decided to do a wee bit of kind of reading into it. And so Diogenes was a Greek philosopher, and was apparently one of the founding members of this school of thought, the school of thought called Cynicism, which apparently has nothing to do with being cynical. I don't know if that's where that word is even derived from. I don't know. But it's in fact a school of thought which proposes that people must live by virtue and in line with nature, and that individuals may gain happiness through engaging in rigorous training and outwardly reject all conventional desires for wealth and property. And I thought that if you look at the kind of preceding lyrics, he kind of sings about high kicking the moon out of its socket, but then goes on to say that all my good times were pursued out of pocket. So I don't know if that was I'm sure it was intentional, but I'm not intelligent enough to kind of read more into it other than that. But yeah, I certainly think that there's quite a lot of different themes and what have you being explored here.
Yeah, I think sort of a really complex album. But there are like it's there's a lot of complexity peppered with like just sort of sections of like more traditional hip hop, which you can kind of, for fans of that kind of thing, you can kind of catch on to, like on
Red Guard
like
Snipers.
Red Guard Snipers. Yeah, exactly. Like for the first like maybe half of that, it's got like, well, it's got like a sort of 60s sci-fi B movie kind of synth, or like be something like a Tron or something like that as the main melody, but it still sounds like a traditional hip hop song in like the like flow and timbre of his voice. But then, I mean, it's a 5 minute song, and after 2.5 minutes, it just kind of throws that all away and becomes like, I don't know, just it's just something completely different. And it's like there's like a spoken word interlude with a really sludgy, sort of slow paced outro, which is completely at odds to the sort of bright and breezy, lazy Sunday drive kind of first half of the song. It's it's quite bizarre, but but enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah. So track number 5, Red Guard Snipes. That's where he's joined by SB the Moor, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes, I think so. Who I mean, or is that? Mm, not sure actually.
The
There's a couple of guest spots on here, but I don't know. I don't recognize them. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I think in the song that we're talking about, Red Guard Snipers. That's where I think is that where again, like I said, there's this kind of bright and breezy kind of chorus section where it's like new verbs, new words. No, I'm not going to attempt to sing any more of it,
No, I
but
think no, I think you're right. Yeah.
yeah. So that yeah, there are elements like that, which I suppose fans of the kind of hip hop and genre are more likely to kind of sink their teeth into. Track number 6 for me, I quite enjoyed that as well. Kind of sips of Ripple wine. Kind of, it's interesting you were kind of talking about the kind of old fashioned kind of electronic sounds. I've described this as being kind of opening with this really groovy bass line and almost Knight Rider esque spiraling electronics.
Yeah, I've said it's like a 70s cop show.
Yeah, well, there we go.
Feels a bit like that.
Um, but that's fairly short lived, and then Ferreira starts rapping again. But again, he then starts messing about with the time signatures again. I can't remember if is this the same song. It's a really funny bit. Like I laugh. I don't know if it's in this song, but I laugh every time he sings it, where he's talking about leveling up. I'm pretty sure it's this song. You need to
It is, yeah.
leveling up or something, which I just laugh every time I hear it. And yeah, there's another kind of inclusion of a kind of brief audio clip of another poet by the name of Ted Jones, introducing one of his poems, which I believe is, from what I've found, is a short from a short movie called Jazz and Poetry by a guy called Louis Van Gasterton from 1964, and then there's a return to his kind of rap, sort of Ferrara's rap slash poetry, and then it ends with that same recording of Ted Jones then going on to read that poem. And I'm pretty sure he says something along the lines of, if you see a man running towards you, speaking out loud, don't run in the opposite direction. He's a poet. And you do not need to fear the poet. And I was like, I don't know if that's strictly true, mate.
It was a bit about this the sort of guy
saying, if you think you've got talent or something, it's like go over to those guys working in construction in the street, and when they're on their lunch break, read them some of your poetry, and if they like beat you up, you've no talent. But if they leave you alone, then maybe you should continue with this as a career. I mean, I'm butchering that entirely, but
Well, it's no, but it's pretty much it. That's in the next song, Strength, which is it's probably my favorite track in the album. And I think there's a clip in it where he's like, "If you want to be a poet, you can't. You got to know you're a poet," or something. And I couldn't find who says that bit. Sorry, who said that, but where that kind of audio clip came from. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. For me, it kind of reminded me, certainly like the kind of latter end of the song, reminded me a bit of Awake off the Doors album American Prayer, which we discussed in our kind of top 20 podcasts, particularly with those kind of Ray Mancharex-esque synth flourishes, which I kind of really quite enjoyed. But yeah.
I mean, there's a lot we could talk about on this. You could do loads of research and try and pick apart like all these songs and try and figure out what all of this means, and I don't know if you would ever unravel it, but it is it's a very interesting listen.
Absolutely. What did you rate it? Did you give it a rating?
Yeah, I've given it an 8.
So I've given it a strong 9, possibly a 10.
Well, fuck it, man. If that's what
Fuck
that's
it.
what you think.
Yeah, man, I really enjoyed it. And like I said, of all the albums we've kind of reviewed this time round, this is the one that I keep coming back to and I've listened to the most.
I don't know how you would get on with Arm and Hammer. It's a similar like sort of weird time signatures and sort of changes of pace and direction and stuff, but it's a lot more. This album's quite bright for the most part. There's the odd bit of like panic and tension in some of the songs, but Arm and Hammer are generally quite oppressive in the sort of soundscapes, especially on they've got an album. They had an album out last year, but their previous one, Paraffin, is really really dark, but really good. So I don't know. You might get on well with them as well.
Might check them out.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's really surprised me because, like I said, I thought you would hate this because it's.
Can I press my golden button and put it into the Hall of Fame?
Fuck, of course you can.
Fuck it.
You need to get a sound effect or something.
Yeah, I need to hook this place up with confetti and a clapping audience.
like a solitary golden balloon that like rises to the. What is it? I talked about The Simpsons already, but when Homer bowls a perfect game, he bowls a 300, and the guy takes out like a key, and he's like, "Oh, you've bowled a perfect game," and he unlocks the key and opens up this what you're expecting to be like this massive celebration. It's just like one solitary balloon with 300 round, and it slowly rises to the ceiling. Yeah. There's always a reference to The Simpsons to be found. Anyway, okay, well that goes in the
That's going in.
that goes into the Scratchcast Hall of Fame then.
Yeah, man.
Bob's son by R.A.P Ferreira.
I think I've called him half a dozen different things throughout the course of that review there.
Well, he is. I mean, he's
Oh,
got
wow.
like 5 different pseudonyms. Like,
I think I'm just
called him-
mispronouncing his name though for the most part.
I think he called him Black Morpheus. I think it's Black.
Well, that's he describes himself as the Black Morpheus.
No,
Oh.
say it's Orpheus, isn't it?
Oh fuck!
Because Morpheus is already black.
Yeah, he's from the Matrix.
Yeah.
Edit that bit out.
So just say Black Orpheus,
Black Orpheus.
and then I will cut it out and put it in the right place.
Black Morpheus. What the fuck?
I'm not really going to do that. I'm going to leave the fuck up
I
sentence.
know you will. I know you will.
Uh,
There's a title for the podcast right there. The Black Morpheus. Oh, no. What an insult.
Dude, Bob's son. This beat remind me of angels turning coat, ruby yachts and burning boats.
I could take it to the graveyard by dissecting it. Toothless. Toothless.
My only defense against fate is color.
I'm the type of slave you buy if you need a new master. I could rap the blues backwards and around myself, tied in the front like a karate belt. New slurs, new verbs, new curves, new nouns, new sounds.
You don't get hit in the head, you got a future.
You know this life is vicious and it seems the only option is to cling to the mind that retains the faculty to dream. Bombionists do not feel pain no matter how much it hurts. Bombionists do not use the word square except when talking to square.
right. Okay. Last album then. Well, so we've talked about this band a couple of times, so they don't really need an introduction. It is Welfare Jazz by Viagra Boys. This is their second full-length album, released on the 8th of January 2021 on year 0001 Records. It's 13 tracks and approximately 40 minutes long. So we've talked, like I said, we've talked about Viagra Boys. Their the deluxe version of their album Streetworms went into the Scratchcast Hall of Fame, and we talked about their Common Sense EP last year, which we were fairly positive about as well. So with Streetworms being a podcast favourite and Common Sense being like a nice addition, how excited were you for new Viagra Boys album?
I was pretty excited. I mean, I enjoyed the Common Sense EP, but I think I was quite critical of it. I think I said previously that the Common Sense EP was made with common sense sensibilities, and it kind of felt a lot more restrained rather than their previous offerings. But I think they've came back with a vengeance with this album.
Well, I think Common Sense showed a few different
stylistic differences.
Styles, yeah. Showed a sort of broad different style, and I think this album does as well. I mean,
it does.
I don't think it's just another Viagra Boys album. I think you might not guess that from the first song. The first single, Ain't Nice, is basically a straight up Viagra Boys banger, which is really good. Have you seen the video for it?
Yeah, he's kind of walking down the street, isn't he, and nicking folks' bikes and stuff like that, isn't he?
Yeah, he's basically like off his tits and like walking, like the camera kind of pans down the street as he walks along, and he's just generally causing mayhem. Like he spews on the street, he steals a scooter from a kid and then like tries to do a trick and like messes it up, and then he steals somebody's jacket. He tries and fails to steal a dude's bike. He gets in a fight, and then at one point the camera just keeps going and the music keeps playing, and he goes out of shot, and then at a sort of pivotal moment in the song he comes back into shot on the micro scooter from the start, and his jacket's on fire. It's it's just a really good video in that sort of classic Viagra Boys style, I suppose. And
Yeah, so I mean that first track's just, it's got that kind of typical kind of bass grunt that with lots of kind of weird electronics and spurts of saxophone that you would expect. And then it kind of like the next track is like it kind of took me off guard a little bit because I was expecting it to kind of continue with that momentum, and it just throws in like a short, smoky kind of saxophone interlude.
Yeah, Coldplay.
Yeah, Coldplay, which I wasn't expecting, and yeah, I think it threw me off a little bit on the first listen. Just there were things on the album that I wasn't expecting, and it just threw me off a little bit. But the more I've listened to it, the more I've found that I really quite enjoy it.
What did you make of Toad, the third track?
I It's a weird one. It's like it's got a really good bass groove,
Yeah.
and it's got this kind of weird jangly kind of Western steel guitar mixed in, and it seems to be like, I guess it's just a song about like, oh, I don't need women, I don't need, I don't need anyone. I'm just this free spirit like rambling between towns, um, and there's a good line in it where he goes, "By the time the morning comes, baby, I'll be hopping right on out of here, just like a frog or a toad, like a toad." And that was what kind of endeared me to the song, was that line in particular.
Yeah, I suppose to provide a bit of context with regards to the album. So I read an article that he did. He did an interview with the NME with a woman by the name of Becky Rogers, which dated on the 13th of January. And he stated that a lot of their previous material had basically been a celebration of being fucked up, and that if they were an emo band, they would be making music that celebrates that. There's a kind of negativity and kind of wallowing in it somewhat, but instead Viagra Boys have always kind of made a party out of it. However, in that same interview, he states that this album was written in the context of a lot of his friends telling him that he was a jerk, and that his girlfriend split up with him around about that time as well. So he acknowledged in that interview that he was in quite a bad place at the time, and he was quite depressed, and found that the process of writing this album for him was quite cathartic. And I think you can see elements of that themes being explored throughout the course of the album. So we mentioned Ain't Nice, so obviously Ain't Nice. As you said, it's just another kind of weird and wacky, quintessential Viagra Boys track, where, there's lyrics that include like, "You ain't that nice, but you got a nice face. Hope I can fit all my shit at your place." Collection of vintage calculators. "If you don't like it, well, babe, I'll see you later." So it kind of paints the kind of central antagonist as being quite an abrasive, difficult, kind of awkward person. And like you said in Toad, he's saying he's just gonna, jump on out of here. I think in that same song he says that he doesn't need a woman telling him when he needs to brush his teeth and what have you. But I think he kind of mellows throughout the course of he does kind of mellow. We're then kind of treated to This Old Dog, which I quite enjoyed, even though it's this kind of weird kind of spoken word poem. There really isn't all that much to it, but he's kind of putting on this kind of weird voice anyway. I don't think that's his usual accent. I know he kind of speaks with this kind of Southern American drawl anyway, but I definitely think he's putting on a voice in that song, or
Yeah,
that
and
piece.
I mean, it's what, like 30 seconds long,
It's not at all, man.
something like that, and it's that voice he puts on reminds me a little bit of like Best in Show, and it sets up a couple of tracks that are on the album later, because it talks about his kind of paranoia about his dog, like watching him and judging him and like spying on him, and he's like, I think my dog was once a spy, a double agent in disguise, and that sets up sets up some stuff later on.
Yeah, because does it not end with like He says many things but does not speak, or something like that.
Yes, something like that. Yeah, or he knows many things.
He knows many
I
things
can't
too.
remember, but yeah, it's that kind of idea. It's just a general like distrust of, just a general paranoia which comes from like, I think
Taking
is
lots of drugs.
from taking lots of drugs. Exactly.
um, just to go back to kind of what I was saying earlier on, I think certainly in kind of track number 5, Into the Sun, which opens with this kind of gloomy, shuffling kind of bass riff, before it starts getting layered up with some more kind of floaty and ethereal electronics. I think there's a definitive kind of directional shift in the kind of lyrical content. As I said, I think it's round about here where he kind of starts mellowing. And seems to be kind of repenting for the things that he'd done in the past, specifically stating on one occasion that he would do anything to take back the things that he had done. But for me, Creatures, like the next track, track number 6, that was one of my favourites. I definitely thought it showed a kind of different side to the band. Opens with this kind of pulsating electronic sound, which is carried over from the previous track, kind of Into the Sun kind of bleeds into Creatures, before kind of bursting into this really kind of confident, luxurious, and kind of polished post-punk new wave kind of synth riff, with this kind of surprisingly upbeat chorus to boot. Again, the lyrics are quite weird and wacky. Kind of talks about living underwater, at the bottom. Yeah.
So there's a really good article on Stereo Gum, which is basically just an interview with Sebastian Murphy, where they go through every track on the album and he discusses like the sort of ideas behind the songs and things. So a lot of what you've said about kind of some of the other songs, you know, he talks about that, like where Toad is just him being this asshole basically and refusing to change, and like Into the Sun is him kind of almost admitting his faults and trying to repent. I think Creatures is just about his life as a speed addict,
Yeah.
basically being a creature, essentially living with all the other creatures, and like trading stories about like electronic equipment that they've found or stolen, and just weird stuff like that. Because he mentions that for a good portion of his life with his previous girlfriend, he just would wake up, take some speed, and then spend his day like soldering like random pieces of electronic equipment, and he had like a mad collection of electronics, which he had kind of alludes to on Toad, where he says he's got all these vintage calculators and he needs all this space for his stuff. So there are like these weird undertones of like his bizarre life that he was living for a number of years.
I've written here, as I said, he kind of sings about kind of living under the water and at the bottom. And I've written here possibly a metaphor for living on the peripheries of society. So obviously, he kind of talk. I think there's one lyric where he says that he used to live there too. He couldn't breathe, but he didn't care as long as he had a microchip to keep him up at night. Possibly a metaphor for drugs. I don't know. Does any of his electronics feature in the songs? Like, are they
Like-
musical electronics or?
Like, because he built these, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I mean, actually know whether he's kind of created these sounds from like cobbled together kit or what, but yeah. I mean, Creatures, if you forget about all that stuff
Aye.
and just listen to it, it's a pretty cool song. Like it's sort of 80s synth vibe, but I don't get on that well with it because just his vocals in the chorus I don't like that much. It is growing on me, but I quite like the verse, but his vocals just kind of grate on me a little bit in the chorus, which doesn't ruin it. It just kind of lessens my enjoyment of it. Let's
Yeah.
put it like that. But and that like it's that's a totally different song to what we've heard really on these other, like on the other album and the EP. Whereas Six Shooter, the next track is pretty much well, it's very similar to Amphetamine on Streetworms. It's just like a full on grooving instrumental track, which is just kind of the Viagra Boys sound, with a driving bass and like a sort of this sort of caged saxophone that kind of like it has this thing where it tries to kind of break free, and then towards the end it gets its kind of chance to take off a bit. I found kind of when I was listening to this song, I found my mind wandering a bit, and I was just kind of imagining like if they were playing this live, like what would Seb be doing? Like,
Well, if you watch his,
I've seen him on a few live clips.
he just kind of goes like this mostly.
But other times he sort of stalks around the stage and like rolls about on the ground, and like I've seen him. I can't remember what it was, but he was like just lying on the ground puking in a bucket at one point. It's like really, I don't know if that was when he was kind of off his tits, but or if that's like a persona or whatever. But
it's difficult to know, isn't it?
But yeah, I just found myself kind of imagining what he would be doing like on the stage while that song was going on. But it's quite good. It's like, you know, it's just got a nice groove that you can lock into. You've then got Best in Show 2, which is a short sequel. I suppose it's more of a homage than because it's not really a. Is Best in Show a song, like a longer? Is it longer? I can't remember.
Best in Show is longer than Best in Show 2.
Yeah.
Because I think does it detail a race? I can't remember. I've got a feeling that like this is a repetition of Best in Show from Streetworms with added effects and echoes.
But in Streetworms, it's more like it's like Crufts in space or something like that.
It's a commentary on something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but Best in Show 2 is it kind of leads on from that, but it's far more like evil and demented. Like the dog is like becoming, I don't know, it's like a supervillain or something. It's like it's like there's a couple lines. It's like the dog's like he thrives in his own decadence, or the earth belongs to him, and those lines are delivered in this really evil sounding, really deep voice, while the rest of it is in this sort of kind of echoey southern drawl. But it's those bits that sound particularly what's the word I'm looking for?
Ominous.
Ominous is exactly what I'm looking for. So it's quite interesting. I mean, it's just a kind of stupid little interlude, but it's quite entertaining. And then Secret Canine Agent, again, kind of goes back to his suspicion of that his dog, and it's basically a sequel to
Frogstrap,
where Frogstrap was like, you know, what was it, a tetrapod that is like a secret agent frog, like
yeah,
the frog with a microphone attached to him.
They do specifically mention frog strap, like somebody wearing a frog strap.
He does, yeah. He does mention a frog strap in the song, and it's even this sort of that driving bass line is pretty much exactly the same as Frogstrap. Yeah. It's got a different. The vocals are slightly smokier, and it's got like it is different, but that sort of driving bass line is very, very similar. But it's again, it's it's a very Viagra Boys song, I suppose.
And I suppose as is Girls and Boys, like the next track.
Well, there's I Feel Alive in between, which is a bit different. It's got like a sort of a flute part and stuff, and like it's quite mysterious, and I think it's kind of an almost ironic song about like he's saying I feel alive, but he's actually kind of more he's in like he's at kind of rock bottom. But yeah, Girls and Boys is again, I mean I've written here classic Viagra Boys, but with a disco beat.
Did you see you likened it to sports there?
No, I just said classic Viagra Boys.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a bit of sports. I'd love to know what the connection is with shrimps, because there's like a lyric that says the only real friends I've got, shrimps. That is like a motif that features throughout the course of the band's work. I'd love to know what the connection, shrimps and dogs. Yeah.
But it comes that bit's great because it comes after like it goes girls, they always try to tie me down. Boys, they want to go out on the town. And then he later goes, dogs, the only real friends I got. And he's like, shrimps, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
That's like the part of the album where I actually like laughed out loud. It's just came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. We've got then To the Country, which feels just that. It's kind of strange country number. Perhaps one of the most refrained and somber tracks on the album. There's kind of sparse piano. Again, that kind of restrained saxophone. For me, it kind of felt as if it was maybe a bit of a kind of prelude to the album's final track, In Spite of Ourselves, which is a cover of an American folk and country singer, John Prine, who passed away last year on the 7th of April due to complications caused by the COVID-19 crisis. The song's a duet, and John Prine originally sang the song with a singer by the name of Iris Dement. In this case, Murphy is joined by Amy Taylor from the Australian punk band Amyl and the Sniffers, whom we previously reviewed on episode number 3, so like way back, in episode number 3 of the Scratchcast podcast. Needless to say, the band kind of put their own spin on the track. It kind of opens with these, I kind of described it as kind of really disjointed and unsettling kind of cacophony of kind of guitar slides and the kind of shuffling drum beat. Which, yeah, it didn't really sit very well to me, but that's relatively kind of short-lived, and then it kind of dissipates, and then the singers start the duet around the kind of 35-second mark. And I thought they'd maybe kind of tweaked around with the lyrics.
So did I, but
they hadn't. They haven't at all.
It's a very like you. I thought, oh, maybe they've changed the lyrics, because they are very. I mean, despite the sort of country leanings, you wouldn't necessarily know. I mean, I didn't know this was a cover the first time I heard it.
No,
I mean, I don't know much about John Prine anyway, but just from the sort of lyrical content, you'd be like, well, this is just a Viagra Boys with a country song with a country twist. So, and the John Prine version's all right. It's more acoustic-y,
yeah,
and far more like traditional country in the vocals and some of the instrumental parts. But I think this is one of my favorite songs on the album.
It is a good track, man. It is a good track.
And similarly to The Country is one of my favorite songs as well. I just like how completely different these last two tracks are. It's which is always good to see bands trying something different rather than just kind of sticking with what they know people like. And it's weird because they're both kind of country songs, and so which normally turns me off. But I suppose they're sort of far more, they're darker and more twisted, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah. But I think it's definitely worth checking out that Stereogum article if you want to know more about the every track on the album, basically.
Yeah, I think I will have a listen to that. Well, sorry, have a read of that.
Cool. How would you rate this then?
So I've given it a strong 8, possibly a 9.
Yeah, I'll go with an 8. And to be honest, like the first time I listened to it, I was a bit like it felt a bit disjointed, and I was just a bit like I don't really know about this. But now that I've given it a bit more of a chance, I do really like it. I don't think it's got quite the same impact that Streetworms had, but I still think it's really good. So a strong 8, definitely.
Cool, man. Cool.
All right then. So that was Jazz Welfare. No. It was Welfare Jazz. Jazz Welfare is something you go on when you can't get a gig, is it?
That's when the COVID-19 wrecks the the music and entertainment industry.
Right, okay, so Welfare Jazz by Viagra Boys.
Way down under the water, we don't have jobs. It's his party, and he can keep screaming fast if he wants to. He belongs not to the earth, but the earth belongs to him. He's a secret. Looking at agent. Out on the country. Out on the country.
He ain't been late in a month of Sunday. I caught him once and he was sniffing my ends.
All right, well, I'll just plow through the outro unless there's anything else you want to throw in.
No, man.
So, thanks again for listening. We'd love to know your thoughts on what we covered. And I'm sure the bands and artists would love to hear from you too. If you really like some of what we covered, then please consider buying their music or their merch. It's the best way to support the bands. It just is. If you want to support the show, then don't forget to subscribe to the Scratchcast on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember to leave us a nice review, as it helps promote our humble show. And if you so wish, buy Grant or myself a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, and leave us a nice message. Also, if you'd like to be featured on Submission Corner, then, like I said earlier, just send your submissions into theheadscratcher@outlook.com or send us a direct message on our social media. If you can't wait a month for the next episode, then head over to theheadscratcher.com, where we continue to post pop culture reviews and recommendations. And you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast, episodes of The Itch, and all of our monthly alternative music playlists. By the time this goes live, the January playlist will be out. Some of my choice cuts on that are FJL by the Moore Family Band, Wasted Days by Bad Nerves, I Want to Kill You by Citizen, and the Hey Marcel remix by Voldo and Nine Finger Nigel. Finally, you can visit us on Facebook and Instagram at The Head Scratcher, on Twitter at ScratcherHead, and on YouTube, where you can see our ugly mugs and find all the podcast episodes split down into individual reviews. Those reviews are also available on Facebook Watch, and the top 20 of all time and Hall of Fame videos are also on Instagram TV. please like, subscribe, and follow for updates. So if you've made it this far, thanks once again for listening. And as always, please tell your friends, your colleagues, your parents, and your pets. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
Goodbye.
It's not finished. It's finished.